You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we have a special guest today. Today, we have a true honor talking to the founder and CEO of Butter.ATL. He also is the podcast host for the amazing show you need to check out on iHeartRadio. Anywhere you can get podcasts is Butternomics. First and foremost, I want to say to you, Brandon, how you doing, man?
Hey, Shamaya, thanks for having me. I'm doing amazing.
Man, I appreciate your time, man. You have an amazing brand. You have an amazing city, Atlanta. I mean, who doesn't love Atlanta? Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start the show.
Yeah, in Atlanta, we have this saying that Atlanta influences everything. And, we really believe that one of our biggest exports out of Atlanta is culture. I mean, it's one of the biggest, black meccas, as we call it, in the country. And there's just so many amazing stories that happen down here that a lot of times don't get shared. I mean, obviously people hear about the music and entertainment stuff. There's so many things that happen in just business and other brands outside of that. And so myself, I've known about a lot of these people for years. I've seen these stories kind of evolving. And I said, you know what? We need to do a better job of telling our own stories down here in Atlanta before somebody else comes and tells them for us. The whole idea about Butternomics is just highlighting the people, places, and things that make Atlanta an amazing city, but also showing, how people are building things and building businesses out here that really land authentically in culture. Because, I personally believe that the people that built those kind of brands that land authentically in culture kind of have a secret sauce or a rocket fuel. And like what better place than Atlanta to showcase those people on a national scale, because they're just doing amazing work out here that sometimes falls through the cracks.
Just yesterday, you released an episode with Maya Table Talks and talking about filming and that whole scene with her. When it comes to guest selection for the show, what's the criteria you use to selecting your influencers to be on?
The biggest thing is they got to be dope, man. I'm going to be honest with you. I look for people that are really building stuff that's interesting, that are doing things that really have a level of cultural relevance out here. And that also, have stories and backgrounds that can really provide value to our audience listeners. Maya's been doing a lot of amazing work. But even when you listen to her story about how she got started and, what it took to kind of get to the level she's at, I think people can understand how relatable that is and how they can actually follow in those very similar footsteps. And so many times, the only stories we hear about are like the billionaire CEOs that did something amazing at 18. Like Mark Zuckerberg starts Facebook in his dorm room at 18. Well, a lot of folks in this community, we didn't have that same opportunity. We didn't go to Harvard. We didn't go there. We didn't start at 18. We didn't have those same resources. A lot of folks start later in life for lots of different reasons. And so the whole idea, again, is finding people that are really doing things that are, that are amazing, but also kind of taking a bet on themselves. They're believing in themselves and they're believing in their vision and the opportunity and really kind of doing things that then all of a sudden take off. And so, a lot of times we kind of focus on only that kind of startup story. And also what's also interesting is a lot of folks that we try to highlight, they're well beyond the startup phase of their business. They're in years 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, and Jay Carter from One Music, best example. And so he's not worried about, how to design a logo. He's worried about how do I scale up my, 100,000 plus person a year festival to do even more? How do I, curate my team that goes from 6 people to over 200 people during the festival to help sure that I can make it and run it? Like those are stories that I think kind of fall outside and don't get heard all the time because we only focus on the beginning. But let's talk about some of those things, because there's a lot of value and a lot of nuggets and gems in there as well that can be brought out.
We're talking to Brandon Butler, host of the podcast Butternomics, the business of culture. You can hear on iHeartRadio anywhere you hear podcasts. My next question for you, man, is you mentioned Atlanta's the chief export of culture. How do you see this evolving in the next few years, and what role does Butter.ATL play in that evolution?
Yeah, I mean, Butter, I always say we're kind of, one of the the guardians of the culture in a sense in Atlanta. Right now, we have this joke we always say, Atlanta's full because we get so many people coming here from out of town. And what's really interesting is it's important for us to tell our own stories, because as people come from other places, those stories start to get diluted and start to disappear. A great example is whenever you go to a Hawks game out here or a Falcons game, a lot of times there are more jerseys in the fans for the other team than there are for the home team. And, that's because you have some people down here that are transplants that kind of bring their own culture with them. So for us, it's really important that we kind of protect it as Atlanta becomes an even more national, global, international city, so that our stories don't get lost. In 2026, the World Cup will be in Atlanta. And so even for that, as one of the host cities, we know we're going to be on a showcase just like we were back during the 96 Olympics. How are we, putting people in positions and telling our stories now so that as Atlanta becomes even more globalized, those stories don't get diluted and people kind of know who are the architects of these things that make Atlanta so amazing.
When you look at the next generations of CEOs and creatives from Atlanta, those who could be listening to this episode once it's released, what advice will you give to that young mind to inspire them to say, hey, these are some things I learned and this is what you can do?
Yeah, I think the big part of it is that, if something is in you, if you really believe that you have, a vision or an idea that you want to bring into the future, my recommendation is that you should look into how you can make that possible. Everything that we see in this world started as a thought. And the most beautiful thing about the human mind is the ability to kind of manifest something out of nothing. And so if you really and truly believe that you have something in your idea that you got to get out there, there's a reason why it was put inside of you. So my belief is that, if you really feel that way and you're willing to go on that journey, because it's not going to be easy, it's definitely going to be bumpy, but you should look at, okay, how can I bring this to life? And there's lots of different ways to do that. Maybe you do it as a side hustle, maybe you do it part-time, but just get it out there because you never know what'll happen. And more importantly, if it's in you, the world probably needs it. I remember when I launched Butter.ATL, I just said to myself, I think this is what Atlanta needs at this time. And even as I look now, Butter's influence is all over Atlanta. There are so many things that I see every single day from different brands out here, different companies, things in the culture that I know for a fact were influenced by Butter. And I can't imagine what Atlanta would look like had I never started Butter.ATL. And so, I would just tell people, think about it again. The world needs your ideas. They need your vision. And it's your responsibility to put it out there.
One last quick question for you as a leader of innovation and culture. What do you say to your team to keep them in line with your vision for your brand?
I always think my team, it's important, again, to kind of pay attention to what's in front of you, but have intention for the future. And, communication is really important. I think as a leader, you have to, be really focused on communicating your vision to your team, but also understanding what are their goals and objectives. Because if people are working with you and supporting you, it's not just for a paycheck, hopefully. Hopefully they're getting paid, but also hopefully they're buying into your future, and hopefully you're buying into their future as well. So, one of the things I tell my team is, let me know how I can support you and your goals. I understand you're not going to necessarily be here forever, and that's cool. This is just a stop on your career. Maybe you're here for a long time. Maybe you're here for a short time, but however long you're here, I want to be, inspirational and supportive of what your goals are, because you never know what you're going to go on to do next. I have people that have worked for me in the past that have gone on to do amazing things. I had somebody, that I used to work with who, gave me a relationship with a CEO of a major corporation. And we had dinner the other week with me and that CEO just because of a relationship that I had 20 plus years ago, and I did right by that person. And so again, when you're building something and you're supporting your team, it's not just about what you want to do, but understand what they want to do and how you can support them, because you never know where they're going to go next. And, those relationships are just priceless.
Talking to the one and only Brandon Butler, host of the podcast Butternomics, the business of culture. You listen to iHeart anywhere here. Podcast. First and foremost, thank you for your time. You have a good one, man.
Thanks, you too.